Hey folks, today we're really excited to bring you part one of our interview with the great Dennis Chambers, but first I want to remind everybody who lives in Los Angeles to come on out to our show tonight at the Steve Allen Theater. We've got Stella Mozgava from Warpaint, Fred Armisen from the 8G Band in Portlandia, and the legendary Clem Burke of Blondie. It's all going down at the Steve Allen Theater in Los Feliz tonight, Wednesday, March 2nd at 8 p.m. See you there.
The Trap Set will always be available for free, but we rely on donations from our listeners. Please visit our website at thetrapset.net and click Donate. Subscribe to our show on iTunes, and if you enjoy what you hear, give us a review.
This is Joe Wong. Welcome to The Trap Set, where each week we explore the lives of drummers. I want to play something for you. You're hearing The Nag by John Schofield, featuring my guest, Dennis Chambers on drums. A native of Baltimore, Chambers displayed prodigious musical talent as a child and began performing in clubs at age 6. Just after finishing high school in 1978, he joined Parliament Funkadelic at the height of their powers. After a 7-year stint with P-Funk, Chambers turned his focus towards fusion. Over the subsequent 30 years, he's played with everyone from Mike Stern to Santana. Aside from his work as a touring and recording musician, Chambers released a series of extremely influential instructional videotapes in the 80s and 90s. He showcased jaw-dropping techniques and unique grooves that have inspired generations of drummers, especially those in the modern gospel and R&B scenes. Dennis recently suffered a health scare that almost ended his life. When we met at his hotel in Los Angeles, he was unusually talkative and open. Because our conversation lasted so long and was so good, we decided to release this episode in 2 parts. Part 2 will come out next Wednesday. And now my conversation with Dennis Chambers.
My mom was a background singer for Motown Records before I was born. And
In Detroit.
She was from Baltimore, but she went to Detroit.
Got it.
And she was there not that long. She left Motown when I was maybe 1.5 years old or something like that.
Okay.
Maybe 2. I can't remember. But I remember.
Were you born in Detroit?
I was born in Baltimore.
You were born in Baltimore,
Yeah.
Okay.
I was born in Baltimore, and then she went, her job was taking a bus going to Detroit and,
Got it.
Going and working there and blah, 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 come back. And then she put a band together in Baltimore when she left Motown. Put a band together, and that was the only thing that would keep me still, watching that drummer play, her drummer play. His name was Booney, as I recall, and he had a champagne sparkle Gretsch kit.
Round badge.
For a three-piece, yeah. 4-piece, I'm sorry. 4-piece Gretsch kit. Actually, it was a 5-piece, but he only played one tom-tom.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Was your dad around?
My dad was around. He was an upholsterer. And thank God he was that, because I used to trash up a lot of furniture, taking knives and forks and banging on the furniture and putting holes in it and stuff like that.
Did that piss your parents off?
Oh,
or
yeah.
were they pretty supportive?
Oh, at first it pissed them off, but then they understood that, maybe he wants to be a drummer.
Yeah.
And they brought me a drum kit when I was 4. Actually, they brought me a drum kit when I was 3.5, somewhere around in there. My neighbors trashed my drum kit.
Why?
Because, for them, it was a toy drum kit. And, for me it was, I was looking at it as it's not like what Booney had, but at least
It was yours.
At least I can express myself as far as learning how to play it.
Right.
To them, it was just something to bang on.
Ah, so they came over and banged on it and trashed it.
Yeah.
How long did that last?
I don't know. I can't recall how long that lasted. But I remember hiding the drum kit from my parents. I would have it under my bed. Yeah, under my bed.
The drum kit would be under your bed.
Yeah.
Because you didn't want your parents to touch it?
I didn't want them to find out that my friends had trashed it.
Oh, okay, gotcha. So were you a happy kid?
No. Yes and no.
I'll take that as a no.
No, but yes and no. I mean, it was like, as I look back on it now, not understanding because I was a kid what my parents and my upbringing was, what that was all about. Growing up at my grandparents' house, and believe me, they were just two beautiful people, and I miss them dearly.
Your grandparents?
Both died a long time ago. And I would do anything for them, and man, I wish they were still around. I would just give them anything they want,
So your parents passed you off to your grandparents at some point?
Yeah, I mean, because my mom, like I said, she was singing and she was on tour, and then she left the tour, left that whole thing. I say about, I think I was like 7 or 8 years old. That's when she decided to, to stay at home,
right,
and become a mom.
Mm-hmm. But you said yes and no. So the good part is that you had these wonderful grandparents. But what, like as an adult now, when you look back at it in retrospect, what was the difficulty coming from?
Well, being in Baltimore, not understanding the black and white issue.
Right.
I remember seeing my grandmother, I'm sorry, taking a bus, and she had to sit in the back of the bus and all that stuff. I remember that, giving up her seat to a white lady.
Mm-hmm.
I remember that. However,
do you feel like that was ingrained in you as a kid?
No. I was about to get to that. My grandparents and my mom, they didn't, talk negative about all of that stuff, especially around the kids.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why, they didn't. And even if they did, I just don't recall it, I remember asking my grandmother, like, why did you have to give up your seat? And she says, shh, we'll talk about it later. And we never talked about it later.
Because she was embarrassed, maybe.
Maybe.
You were a good kid?
I plead the fifth.
Come on, man.
I plead the fifth. I mean, my real name is Milton Chambers, and
what is your real name?
Milton.
Milton?
Yeah, Milton Chambers.
That's hip.
And,
when did you start going by Dennis?
Well, I'm going to get to that.
All right.
I was a menace when I was small.
Ah.
So my father, I think it was my father who nicknamed me as Dennis the Menace, because I would do all kind of crazy stuff to kids, and
like beat them up and stuff.
Well, no, not beat them up, but just doing all kind of weird things to them. Like have my my cousin jump out of a window. He had him
like
bouncing up and down on the bed, the second floor window, and then I jumped. I had this thing playing where I turned around real quick and grabbed the ledge. And before all of this happens, I have a mattress down there, in the alley. So make it sound like I landed down there. I landed very safely, and I was like, look, if I do it, you can do it. You're going to do it, right? He goes, yeah, I'll do it. But, you go first. And I went. Dive, jump, turn around, bam, on the windowsill. Aim my head down, like, so you can hear me as like a distance sort of. All right, Bobby, come on down. I'm down. Really? I'm like, yeah, come on, I made it. He jumps up and down. He jumps out the window. And he's got this serious smile on his face as he's looking at me, and I'm watching him as he's coming by me, and everything's in slow motion, and all of a sudden he had this look confused look, like, why am I hanging there and not down there, And then next thing I see him as he hit the mattress, and he looked like Woodstock from Snoopy,
right?
Charlie Brown, all broken up, hair is all over the way.
Did he bust anything?
Yeah, I think he broke his leg.
Do you still talk to him?
No, not really.
Yeah, I wonder why.
It wasn't because of that. It was just that time just got out of hand. And
that almost seems like something out of a movie. So those were the kind of things that you did. Like,
yeah, my whole life, believe me, it was like, people trying to get me to write books now,
Yeah.
My family and like Bootsy Collins and my friends, trying to get me to write books of some of the stuff that I've been around and sometime talk about.
In your teenage years, you really started to identify as a drummer. This became your life path. What happened?
Well, try to imagine, 13 years old, I was offered a gig with James Brown.
What happened? Did he fire the band and then ask you?
No. He had a place called the James Brown Motor Inn in Baltimore. He owned a few things in Baltimore, but one of them was a radio station, and one of them was a motel, downtown Baltimore. And I happened to play. I was in the place playing with a band, local band, with some friends of mine. And the singer, just so happened, he was imitating James Brown. So we were playing a lot of James Brown music. I go into the bathroom. I'm using the bathroom. I can hear somebody mimic or mumbling some words next to me. And he goes away, and I come out of the stall, and I'm washing my hands, and the guy's he's standing next to me. He's still singing or mumbling as he's picking out his hair. And I happen to look up in the mirror, look at the face, and look down, look back up at the face again in the mirror. It's James Brown standing right next to me, singing or mumbling some lyrics, and I'm washing my hands, and I'm looking at him like, man, it's like looking at God next to you. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I'm washing my hands, and I'm like, Mr. Brown, you don't know me, but it's an honor to meet you, and this, that, da, da, da. And I'm talking to him, and told him that, I'm playing at his place and playing in a band that mimic James Brown music, or playing, James Brown music, and it would be an honor if you come and check us out, and this, that, that. He never looked at me. He just continued on picking his hand. He's like, yeah, kid. Oh, yeah, whatever. Yeah. I'll come check it out. I'm like, great, Mr. Brown. And, I dry my hands off, and I'm looking at him, and he still never looked at me. So I walked away, and I went and told the other band members. They didn't believe me. Yeah, James Brown in the bathroom. Yeah, right, whatever. I'm like, yeah, but think about it. It was him. Now they had me kind of doubting if it was really him or not. So, to make a long story short, I could see the door opening, and I see a bunch of people coming in the club. Like 12 people, something like that.
Entourage.
And they sit in the corner in the dark. And then when we got finished playing, James Brown sent one of his guys over and says, Mr. Brown would like to talk to you. And I'm looking at the guys, and they looking at me like shocked, I'm like, I told you, So I go over there, and he's looking at me right dead in the eye, like, yeah, I like your beat. You got a nice backbeat. What do you think about, coming on the road, to play with Mr. Brown?
He referred to himself as Mr. Brown?
Yeah, Mr. Brown. Mr. Brown, because, he still wanted me to respect him,
right.
So, Mr. Brown, I'm like, oh, yeah, man. I didn't say man. I'm like, yes, sir. Yeah, I would love to do it. But you got to talk to my mom. I said, yeah, I thought so. I kind of figured that. All right, well, give me your number. And I gave my number to a guy that he was sitting with. And Mr. Brown said he would call me. And I'm thinking, like, he's not going to call me. Sure enough, he called. I think it was like 3 weeks, a month later or something like that, he called. Talked to my mom, he talked to me, and talked to my mom some more, and it didn't work out because at the time James he was a strong advocate of like education, and he always had the saying, "Don't be a fool, stay in school." But yet he didn't offer a tutor. He wouldn't offer a tutor for me to go on the road with him.
Mm.
And my mom was like, he ain't going. He's not going anywhere.
Right.
He's going to finish school first. So I didn't go.
Were you mad at your mom?
Oh, I was mad at the world. I was mad at schools, everything. But then, thank God, years and years later, playing with Parliament Funkadelic and getting to meet, some of the guys that played with him and told me how much of a, wild and crazy guy he really was.
A tyrant.
Yeah. I was like, boy, I'm glad I didn't do it.
Can you imagine going through that at age 13?
No, he probably would have messed me up. Yeah.
Yeah. So your mom was right.
Yeah.
Were you a good student?
No.
Why?
I was an okay student.
You didn't care?
I cared, but my love was always just playing drums. I always had like rhythms on my mind.
This episode of The Trap Set is brought to you in part by Colectivo Coffee. Handmade coffee since 1993. Check them out online at colectivo.com.
After being offered the gig with James Brown at age 13, is that what really set you off into thinking, okay, maybe I could really become a professional drummer on the national stage?
Again, I didn't care about none of that. The only thing I cared about is just being the best I can be. Mm-hmm. And being truthful to myself what my weaknesses were and work on those weaknesses.
Right.
I didn't care about being a professional drummer.
And you weren't even thinking about like what were your career options at the time? Like what were other kids in the neighborhood doing?
Well,
would you have gone into upholstery if it didn't work out in music?
Well, no. I mean, I was great at fixing things.
Okay.
Like with engine repair and all that kind of stuff. I can still do that.
Did you go to technical high school or something?
No, but I had a friend who owned a body shop, and sitting around watching him do what he does, and helping him on some things, or assisting him on some things.
So, do you think that kind of analytical mindset is also kind of what enabled you to dissect other drummers playing and play it yourself?
When I listen to another drummer play, I don't really sit there and try to dissect them. When I sit and listen to another musician play, first of all, I come to enjoy the moment.
Right.
I don't walk in thinking about like what he's doing wrong or what he's doing great.
So it's a different muscle than whatever it is that enables you to diagnose what's wrong with a car.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you get into any trouble as a teenager?
No.
So the kind of like menace thing went away once you really started focusing on music?
Yeah. But, I still had little things, some things flare up. And
like what?
Jokes.
Okay.
Little jokes, little pranks here and there.
Have you ever pranked George Clinton?
No.
Carlos Santana?
No. No, there's a time to do it.
You don't prank your bosses.
Well, there's a time to do things and a time not.
Okay.
And I didn't see being around them. There was a time to do it. They were very professional.
Okay, so you're in Parliament Funkadelic. Were you already a huge fan of the band?
Yeah.
Tell me about what that experience was like, coming out of your senior year of high school, going on the road.
Oh, man. First of all, I didn't know what I was going into or getting into. The band was crazy. It was like a party band.
So lots of psychedelics.
It was a lot of whatever you wanted it to be.
Okay, well, what did you want it to be?
I wanted to be a family, like a family, unit, and me just learning all these things about, you know, being in bands and things like that. You know, I mean, I was already in a bunch of bands, but not a band like that. And you know, it's like, you know, for me to gain their trust as being one of them, and you know, vice versa. They know I wasn't, you know, I'm not the, you know, I'm not a guy who steal things, and you know, I'm not going to take from them and things like that. You know, sometimes there'd be card games going on the bus, and people leave money on the table, and they can walk away, go into the truck stop, and come back, and the money's still sitting there.
Right.
You know, that's not today's Parliament Funkadelic. You know.
Well, back then, how did it expand your experience as a person?
Well, I mean, looking at somebody like George Clinton, I mean, the guy was like at the top of his game when I joined the band, and he was there at the top for a good while before I joined. And watching how he related to all of that stuff, you know, I mean, he already had. Well, let me tell you this. He was one of a few guys, in fact, maybe the only one that had like two bands under two different contracts, the same band.
Right.
He had Parliament under Casablanca,
which started out as a doo-wop group, right?
Started out as a doo-wop group, and then he had Funkadelic as under Warner Brothers. Same band though. You know, it was like the only band, or the only guy that pulled that off. And then later on, he put like, you know, like the Brides of Funkenstein. He had Bootsy, he had Parlette, the Sweat Band, all these bands.
And that template really kind of laid the groundwork for people like Prince later on, who had his hand in lots of different projects.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people learned from it, you know. But seeing him at that time and seeing how he dealt with it, and the guy he never tripped. I never saw him get angry at anybody. I never saw him, you know, raise his voice at anybody. Meanwhile, there were some people around him, they were tripping, you know, like they look at people or treated people weird or different because they felt like they were better than them because they worked with George Clinton.
Right.
Meanwhile, I'm working with George Clinton, watching him, he treated everybody fairly, or
Did you
treated everybody
trip?
decently.
Do you feel like your ego ever got out of control at that time?
Because of him.
Yeah.
Because I'm watching him.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there thinking like, well, if he's not tripping, why should I?
Did you ever get wild at the time? I mean, you're a young guy. There's a lot of partying going on.
There was a lot of
party
partying.
Band.
Yeah.
So what were you into?
I was still, you know, pretty much, you know, to myself, and you know, never touched any drugs, any alcohol, you know, going through all of that stuff. And people wonder how I went through it. But I wasn't.
So you didn't do anything when you were in that band?
I was drinking milk still.
What about girls?
No. You know,
you were just focused.
Yeah. You know, of course, girls was like, they were all around, of course, and you know, some wanted to talk to you and some of them didn't, and
right.
And some of them, they would look at me and they saw like when I'm sitting there playing, I look like a scientist, you know, look like an evil guy, you know, and you know, it kind of like scared them, you know, so they were afraid to approach me, as I found out somebody told me this, you know, and anyway, so I wasn't the only one. There was Skeet. Skeet was like that too. Skeet was, you know, very focused guy, and there was Greg Thomas, who lives here now in L.A. He was another one that was from Baltimore, who played in Oklahoma. He was another one. I mean, right to this day, I don't think Greg still haven't touched any drugs, any alcohol. And I know Skeet don't even take an aspirin.
What about you? Did you ever try it?
I started drinking, you know, I started, but not drugs though.
Okay.
Never drug. I mean, the only drug I've taken is, you know, something that was like prescribed to me from my doctor. You know, like I had acid reflux.
Yeah.
You know, and I had to deal with that. You know, and then I had this situation that happened last year, late last year.
I definitely want to get to that in a minute.
Yeah, and so anything that the doctor gave me, that, you know, I took that, but you know, nothing, you know, somebody else give me or say, hey, try this or try that, you know, try marijuana or or shooting. Or,
so you were in Parliament Funkadelic and you never smoked weed?
No.
Once?
No. Well, just watching them.
Yeah.
And seeing what they were getting out of it, and I said to myself, either you got two paths. You can go that path and be one of them who do all of that stuff and always, being party, going, just being a party kind of guy and not being serious about their instrument. Not that serious about the instrument. And, just looking at life as one big party. And for me, life wasn't a big party. Life was serious. I was still living with Mom, at the time. And
were you practicing a lot at the time?
Oh, yeah, I was always practicing.
When do you feel like you came into your own as an artist?
I never did. I never did.
Yeah. I mean, lots of people say that, but I mean, there is a distinctive style that someone can say Dennis Chambers, and it elicits a certain style.
I was, I was too busy moving to realize, what I had done.
So, what was the next step after Parliament?
Being a studio musician. I was.
But you were living in Baltimore.
Yeah, but I was going to New York a lot. Everybody was waiting for me to leave the band, or they were trying to get me to, away from the band while I was in it. And I was the session or in-house drummer for Sugar Hill, thanks to Doug Wimbish, who plays with Living Color now. Mm. He brought me into that whole thing. And
you're living in Baltimore,
yeah,
and traveling up to New York, playing sessions.
Yeah.
What was your state of mind at the time? Did you feel like, okay, it's all happening? Were you enjoying yourself?
No, I was still struggling. I was just trying to still make money.
So you were still kind of broke?
No, I wasn't broke. But
it was a hustle.
I was just trying to, better my circumstances. But I wasn't broke, no.
Are you the kind of person that sets goals as far as that stuff goes?
No. For me, it's like when you set goals, you're setting yourself up for downfalls.
Even when
Possible
it comes
downfalls.
to, even when it comes to practicing music, like you don't think like, okay, I want to be able to
goals.
do this.
It's either I'm going to do it or it's not going to happen.
Well, I talked to Clyde a few weeks ago, and he brought your name up when we were talking about drummers that he influenced over the years. Mm-hmm. And he was just shocked that so many drummers are influenced by him. That's how he feels about it. At the time that he was making those records, he wasn't thinking, okay, we're changing everything. This is making history. And then the fact that people have taken what he contributed and took it in so many different directions just blows his mind.
Well, that's what happens. You talk to people like Steve Gadd.
Yeah.
You talk to people like Harvey Mason, Billy Cobham, all drummers. Jack DeJohnette, Lenny White. They're too busy thinking about, what they're in at that moment, and they're just going for it. They're not thinking about what they're doing to other people. How they're affecting other people, other drummers.
Is that something you ever think about?
No. And I'm shocked. I'm shocked at what I contribute. To a lot of the younger drummers. Mm-hmm. And the gospel chop era, So, I never thought about. There's one thing about me, man. It's like I never took myself seriously. I never believed that I was going to become who I am. And now,
what do you mean by who you are?
Well, a drummer's drummer.
Yeah.
My concern was like always just trying to be honest and truthful to yourself. Every time you sit behind an instrument, you give it 110% all the time.
Part 2 of this conversation will be released next Wednesday, March 9th. The Trap Set is produced by me, Joe Wong, along with Chris Karwowski, who also edits the program. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at The Trap Set, and visit iTunes or our website, thetrapset.net, to subscribe to our show for free. If you enjoyed what you heard today, please donate to our show. If you can't afford to donate, share The Trap Set with a friend and give us a good rating on iTunes. Send your feedback and guest requests to thetrapset@gmail.com.